Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Writing with Subtext with Jim and Diane. How's it going, Diane?
It's going awesome. I had a great week.
That's great. Excellent. You love the Game of Thrones ending. That's really awesome. It just happened on
Oh,
Sunday.
yeah, no, not so much.
She thought it was amazing, and she's really excited about it, and she feels completely satisfied.
Are you afraid of lightning bolts?
with
You should be.
it. She loved it. So, talking about your story, last time that we met, we talked about the story form that we thought had the right thematic premise to it, the narrative argument to it.
So last week we were talking a lot about how a story feels.
Yes, okay.
And so for homework, you gave me to watch the movie Shall We Dance. I think you would have preferred that I would have watched the Japanese version. I
Yeah,
ended up watching the Richard Gere one.
which I'm not familiar with the Richard Gere one. My guess would be that it's not the same story form. I mean, it might be similar, but I wonder if there was one particular element that I'm sure is not the same.
Okay.
Sorry, oh, there it is. Okay, so this is Shall We Dance?
Okay, there it is.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Actually, yeah, okay. So yeah, dramatic comedy, Shall We Dance, which in Japanese means keep showing support for something you love or someone you love, and you can transform your life. The reason
I'm gonna jump in right here and
okay.
say I don't think this fits for a couple reasons.
Okay.
One, there's no really comedy in my story.
Okay.
So like feel wise, when I was watching this, the version I was watching was a dramatic comedy, but it didn't feel like my story.
Okay.
I did have a thought though for another one that was close. I went back to the premise list and I'm like, okay, if it's not this one, what could it be?
Awesome.
And I came up, it was an odd choice, but keep being rigid about your beliefs and you can save the lives of many.
Oh. From Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
Okay, so keeping rigid about your beliefs, and you can save lives of many. And why was this one? What did you
Well,
like about this one compared to the previous one?
For the most part, it was what you were talking about last week. It was really how the story felt, and my story, because of the what I feel the thematics are, turning over your kids to someone else to, like, I mean, essentially torture.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty heavy themes for a dramatic comedy. And it's so I was looking for something with a little more gravitas.
Okay, excellent.
And so I started through that premise list with the triumphant ending again, and I ran across this one, and I went, well, she does end up saving a lot of lives because you're going to have no more magical young men growing up just to get super depressed and die anymore. So I thought I would throw it out there to you. How
Oh,
about
for
that?
sure. It has the same tie to the plot or the overall story that the previous one did. The big difference is the first part, which the other one was more about cheering on people and supporting them and kind of being on their side.
Right?
One was very much like sticking true to what it is that you believe. Have you seen Hacksaw Ridge? Did you watch it?
I haven't. I
Oh,
didn't have time to get it in today before now.
it's actually quite excellent. It's great.
It's on my list of things to watch now.
You should definitely check it out. Yeah, especially since this is probably what will end up being your story form. Um, and even though it says war, historical nonfiction, even though it says specifically war, and also because it's based on history, doesn't mean that this premise is particularly tied to this genre. It's just that the personality of it, like when you said gravitas, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the weight of it, or the kind of feeling, the overall sense of what it's like to go through this story, is further away from that dramatic comedy, Shall We Dance You one that we talked about last week, and more to the serious thing, which is probably what you're looking for. Okay, so then knowing that, I feel like we should just go with this and then take it as far as we can to see how that fits in with your story, like how you can build out a story using subtext, unless you're going to say something.
Well, I do have a question.
Okay. Yeah, ask any questions anytime, for sure.
So one of the things that I know makes a fairly big difference about how a story plays out within subtext and within Dramatica is whether it's start or stop.
Yes.
And I believe this one is stop, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, but doesn't Layla want them to start something? She wants them to start sharing magic. And that was the only thing I could find that like wasn't quite right. And I was like going,
It's interesting you say that, one, because while this does include the elements of if we build this story, it's a little bit different. Like, I'll just do it. We'll just build it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So,
okay.
Hacksaw Ridge. So, in subtext, when you find something that you like, let's just say this is the one that you want, right? If you get it wrong, you can always go back and create a different story. Gives you brief little key points, main character arcs by sticking to their principles, which is these two for sure, the triumphant ending, whether or not the whole growth thing, which we'll get into in a second. But at least these two parts are for sure. So then you can just build a new story here. Boom, and there we go. Okay, so you'll notice this original premise is one that I hand wrote myself. That's why I know all of them. It's like 440 of them now. And it doesn't necessarily include all the bits that it should. And I'm actually right now in the process of making this more refined. So here, instead of just keep being rigid about your beliefs, which it could be stop or it could be start, this one is specifically more towards a stop story. So keep focusing on control and you can obtain, which is the base starting point of what it is that your story is likely about. So if these are the base elements, and the nice thing about subtext now is you're not used to be locked into this, so you would start to develop it, and then you might be right, you might think like, oh wait, well, actually I wanted her to be start, or you might get that sense as you're going through it that it doesn't quite gel with what you're doing.
Okay.
So now you have more control over it so that you can personalize it, make it more your own, and to see if that actually feels like the one that you want to create. So this one for sure, I don't know if that's in save the lives of others. If, as I pulled this up, it brought up a whole bunch of other items that could be obtaining. So you keep focusing on control, you could lose a bet, you could win someone's heart, you could surrender to someone, lose your virginity. Yours is about specifically saving lives. Mm-hmm. Or I think do you like that aspect of it, the save the lives of many, or is there something more closer to what you would say?
No, I actually really like that, because that is sort of the outcome of what Layla does is all of the sudden, half of this population that hasn't necessarily been viable other than as breeding stock, kinda. They become people again. And in the world, that's going to create ripples, but that's the next book.
Right. This is a very classic, like, first setup story for any kind of series that you wanted to do. So while there isn't specifically save the lives of many, you can just type in save the lives of many, and you can have me look at it, and you just submit it for review, because what's important is everybody gets this list of illustrations for these very specific narrative elements. And I want to make sure that they all stay within the context of what they really are, because sometimes people get confused and they might misinterpret the actual meaning of the word, because while this is a very specific word, this one's really easy, obtaining. Everybody knows what that is. But there are some words in narrative that are very particular, but might not gel with what most people understand as being what their aspect of the story should be. So all you do is you just submit this for review, and it'll color it orange for now so that you can still use it, right? And then daily I go over every one, and then if it works, I'll just approve it, and then the next time you come in, it'll be black. You'll get a nice little email. If not, I reject it. I tell you why I rejected it, because it's really important to me that everybody learns from it. And then I'll automatically, it reverts it back to some random choice there. So you might show up and it says you can get your diploma, and then you have to go and try a different one. And then every week, I send out a email newsletter and just collate everything from the prior week so that everybody can learn what it is, how these illustrations work, and that way everybody just increases what their understanding is and everything gets better. But
Awesome.
for right now, this one is definitely it. So the start stop part, which I don't want to get too much into, but it's a very good point, is if she is more focused, well, she's gonna stay strong on her beliefs, right? We know that. Like, she's the one that's on the right path, and then the other guy's gonna change eventually, and that's gonna be the meaning of your story. So this is very much specifically focused on the main character of your story, and she's gonna stay on her right path. The question is her right path, is it more about what she's focusing on that needs to be fixed, or is it more the direction that she's taking things? And those actually create two different kinds of narratives. So for right now, I have it listed as keep focusing on control, and you can save the lives of many. So that's very specifically focused on the problems. Like, this is what's wrong with everything, is they're controlling and doing everything that that they shouldn't be doing, or something like that. What you wanted to do was, and I think this is right, is make it more, not so much keep focusing on everything that's wrong, but like the direction to take things, right?
Right.
That's what you're feeling. I mean, I know you have, I'm trying to keep this really generic and newbie-ish for people that aren't there, but I know
Right, applicable for other people.
Yeah, but I know you have several years of Dramatica, and you already know what you're thinking about or why that is. And I don't want to get into the theoretical reasons for the difference between that right now. I mean, we can later. But the difference here would be, instead of keep focusing on control and you could save the lives of many, it would likely say keep moving towards freedom and you can save the lives of many. So keep moving towards, freeing up things. That way, that's the response or direction that she could take things when she thinks that there's a problem with control. But then you're focusing more on the aspects of moving towards that as opposed to moving away from something, right?
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
Probably what you're looking for, right?
Probably.
So just to get to that for now, and I'm actually in the midst of building something now that you'll just be able to do that, just manipulate everything. I just have to make sure that the different premises are correct. There's a certain way to put them all together. But for now, what we can do is we can just go, because I do believe this is the right kind of story form for you. If you go to story form connections, right? Now this is much more high level stuff. You know what, actually, maybe, I wonder. If I go here, if I go to stories, and I go to, I'm gonna go to subject matter. I go to subject matter. So what did I say? Freedom, right?
Yes.
Freedom. So there's attaining freedom, embracing freedom. So that is actually, or embracing someone's freedom. That's actually probably better. So if I pick that, keep stopping the bad guys. No. Keep getting in the way. Stop being frenzied. It's interesting. Why wouldn't vindication awaits those who keep delaying something? Getting in the way and you can establish a bright future. None of these are right. None of these seem right to you, right?
No, and that may be a thing of, you have been amazing at how many movies that you've entered in here, but it just may be that this particular one isn't in here yet.
It has to be though. Let me see. So I'll just jump. I'll use expert mode. So if you're new to all this stuff, you can follow along. But essentially, there are all these story points that we know based on what it is that Diane has presented to me so far. One for sure is that the main character's resolve is steadfast because she's going to stay on the right path. The other one is, well, we know everything's going to work out great. And we know everybody will be happy and in a good place. And then the main character's direction, which is that specific part of where she wants to take things, is going to be uncontrolled. And let me just make sure. Oh, let's do. The other thing is the goal of the story is very much going to be attain something. And then I guess the last one would be this. And then the growth would be start. Oh, that's crazy. You're absolutely right. Out of the 440 that are in there right now, there is no story that matches that, which is really interesting to me. These are all the ones that are similar. In fact, these are essentially the same story.
Right, but they're all stop, right?
Brockovich, yes. They're all about what happens when you keep your eyes set on what's wrong, that you can actually fix things, right? Which is great. Sometimes, like Erin Brockovich, totally. She's not about what it is that she's actually going to do to fix things. It's just like, this is wrong. This is really messed up. Same thing with Rey in Last Jedi, and then definitely we've already talked about what's his name? Andrew. I think he's the actor. Dobbs or something like that. The guy from
yes, Doss.
Yeah.
Dawson Doss.
Yes, the guy who got all the money for Mark Zuckerberg. That guy. He's his friend that he screwed over. Yes, and he goes to World War II and saves the day. But all four of these films are very much about like what's wrong, what needs to be fixed. So that's an interesting problem. And it's going to be interesting because if you find that this is what you want, then what it requires is coming to us to be able to manually put in the story form for you, because it's just not gonna, it won't work this way. So maybe what we should do then, I guess I could just show, here it is. Okay. In order to create a story form that isn't in Subtext, then you'd have to turn to Dramatica Story Expert, which has all 32,000 possible story forms in the current model. You just have to know what it is you're doing. So what we're doing here is, for those who have Dramatica and they already have an experience with it, when they have a story form that isn't completely 100% in Subtext, because Subtext is based on stuff that's already been done as opposed to the whole world's open to you. What you have to do, because there's no way to really access the structure of a story, the story that Dramatica is actually able to find for you, there's no sort of API. So what we've created is this kind of handcrafted API where you have to print out a report and then Subtext eats it up and makes it so that you can use it in Subtext. Only problem is,
mean to make things hard. I'm so sorry.
well, it's cool because then that makes it so that you have, actually I'll just do this. It's a chance for people to see what is actually going on behind the scenes. I think we agreed on that. I don't remember that one. Definitely success, definitely good. The goal was obtaining. And then the direction for the main character was uncontrolled. Yes?
Yes.
And I believe, I'm going to disappear for a second. Did we figure out what starts and what stops it?
Well, being taken to this neighborhood to go trick-or-treating.
So she saves the day by doing what exactly?
Oh, probably convincing Ruben that he doesn't really want to take Cozy's magic, that it's detrimental, that she knows a better way, that she figured out a better way.
So is it like a decision that she has him do, or is it he doesn't?
Yeah, because he has to decide the tension that I picture in this scene, which is not one of the ones that's written, but the tension I picture in this scene is him trying to decide whether or not to finish the ritual that would take Cozy's magic. They're like in the ritual circle.
And then you were thinking that the way it starts is, I thought that they just happened to get caught. Didn't they go trick or treat?
I guess it starts with their father making the decision that he's going to turn them over to Hepzibah / Ruben.
Oh, okay. So what we're talking about, again, this is like super expert mode on episode 3, but
we're sorry.
The specific plot points for your story are either all going to be actions that will then drive decisions, or they'll be all decisions that drive actions. And it's just a dynamic that's created there so that there is an idea of what kind of stuff is supposed to come up in each act is based on this dynamic. So what comes first, chicken or the egg sort of thing? Is it the decisions that then promote actions, or is it the actions that promote decisions? And in a complete narrative, a functioning narrative, they'll all be the same. So like Jaws is every time somebody gets eaten, that's an action, and then they have to make a whole bunch of decisions, like shut down the beach, oh no, everything's gonna be fine, go out and actually try and kill the shark, and then it's ended with an action. Something like Godfather, the big plot point is, I'm not getting the drug trade, okay, cool, we'll shoot you. So then that's the action that was forced by a decision. And then of course the ending is deciding that Michael is the new Godfather. So those are very decision-oriented stories, and it sounds like yours is leaning more towards that direction. It's a really important choice to make because it sets the whole structure of the story because it'll line up how everything is supposed to play out. But I think that sounds like the kind of thing that you're going for. So then you'll see this used to be 32,767, and now it says one story, which is perfect. That's all we need for subtext. And we got it just by choosing these couple of blue points. And then all these other red ones are story points that are going to balance out the rest of your story to make it what it is that you want to satisfy that premise that we're getting at. So this is the nice part. So this is Dramatica's version of a premise. This whole thing here, right? This is going to be boiled down into that same sentence that was keep moving towards freedom and you'll be able to save the lives of many. This is the very highly detailed version, very specific version of what that looks like. So what we'll do is you go into reports here and we turn off this stuff. And then we will export the reports. Okay, so coming back to subtext, right? So what we're doing now that we have the actual story form printed out from Dramatica Story Expert. See, this is the one that you built before, structure built from Hacksaw Ridge. So what we'll do is we'll upload, and it's really simple. You just choose the file that we just saved, and then create a new story. And you just upload, it does a little munching and crunching, boom. Now it has your complete story here. And see, here you go. Now, instead of keep focusing on control or being rigid about your life, which is what we were talking about before, it's now more focused towards the work that she's actually going to do to solve everything. So keep moving towards living free of restraints, and you can give something away. All right, we don't like that. We want save the lives. Many? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so then keep save the lives of many, and then also, so this is living free of restraints, which I don't think necessarily fits in with what it is that you wanted to say, right?
Right.
And it's not going wild. How, if you would describe kind of the personal statement that you want to get across to your audience, like what you want, your main character, she has a certain way of doing things, and because she goes this way, that's what actually solves all the problems, you know, like that fixes everything.
Okay, so keep moving towards setting someone free, because she's trying to set Cozy free.
Okay. Setting someone free. Oh, brilliant. Excellent. So there you go. So now, instead of, you know, before it was very specific, so I'm just going to, you know, before it might say keep moving towards uncontrolled and you can obtain, which is a very dramatic, a specific way of thinking about it. Now we have an understanding that's keep moving towards setting someone free and you can save the lives of many, which is a really clear thematic statement. And that statement is what that big crazy screen on Dramatica Story Expert was all about. It's all wrapped up into now your structure. So you have your story up here in the upper left, and you have this narrative. So in a story, you might have more than one narrative. So in a story, you might have several different narratives, right? So something like Lord of the Rings has a million different narratives. Your favorite TV show of all time, Game of Thrones, has a whole bunch of different story forms, different narratives that are going on at once, especially your favorite of the last season. And then
you would not believe what my favorite TV show is.
And so, but right now, just because you're doing one novel, and novels usually have more than one because there's a lot more real estate.
Right.
Right now, we're just focusing on one because it's nice to at least get, you know.
We're gonna keep it tight.
Yeah. So this is that narrative here, and then of course you can always add new ones here. And then it's broken down into story beats. It's gone through and taken all the essential beats that have to happen within your story in order to prove this premise. So it's like this, instead of a set of story beats that are based on hero's journey or any kind of, oh, I've seen this a million times in a film, or any of that other stuff. It's based on what it is your story means, and it'll be different. So these story beats will actually be different depending on what it is. If we had stayed with that other one about focusing on control, these would be totally different.
Right.
In order, because it's like trying to argue something different. So here you can see, then they're broken down into 4 acts. There's a strong theoretical reason for that, but it's, most people are familiar with Act 1 is Act 1. Act 2 is usually 2A, 2B, and then Act 4 is Act 3. In this way, you know exactly what it is that's happening in each moment. That again argues this premise. So here you'll have all the story beats. So this is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4. And what Subtext has done is actually gone in and already picked random story beats for your story. And just like you were able to go in and change the premise, keep it locked into the meaning of the story, but actually change the flavor of it, right? The storytelling, the illustration on top. You can do the same exact thing with the story beats, where you can just bring them up and find a different set of items that actually fulfills what it is that you're going for.
Okay.
And then, so this is one way to look at your stories, just to look at it kind of a linear way throughout the entire thing. The other thing is to look at it in terms of the individual through lines. So that premise, in order to prove this, that keep moving towards setting someone free and you can save the lives of many, in order to prove that, what you have to do is you have to make sure you make that argument from all the different angles, right? Because you can say that, and somebody would likely say, well, yeah, that might work in your case, but in my case, that doesn't work. So the purpose of these through lines is to address all those other cases so that nothing's left to chance, nothing's left for the audience to interpret. So then when they go through your story, they're like, wow, that was a complete story. That felt great. And they'll want to go see it again. If you...
I feel that way about Endgame.
Yes.
I want to go see that one again.
Compared to your favorite television series that skipped over some essential beats in order to get it over really quick, that was the sense of ennui that you are sensing, you're feeling, is that some people started with Act 1 and a little bit of Act 2 and then just leaped to the very end of Act 4.
Oh, yeah.
That felt like, wait a second, what just happened there? So the ideas are cool. It's just the progression to get there is
broken.
These essential things, and that's what everybody's freaking out about. So here you have all the different ways that you can look at a story. You can look at it in terms of plot, which is just kind of all the different players that are in your story and who's the protagonist and who's the antagonist. You have the main character, and we're going to get into like specifics of this as we go through the week or the different weeks. The main character, who's the one that we're focusing on, what it's like to be in her shoes and the stuff that she's going through. The one that's challenging her, who has a different way of doing things, his way of doing things and how it is impacting her and making her, forcing her to bear down and just get stronger in her ways, right? Because sometimes you need somebody to challenge you to really know what it is that you believe. And of course, at the end, he realizes, hey, I was on the wrong path, and then he changes. And then there's the relationship story, which for the longest time, we always thought always had to be between the main character and the influence character. And it could be that that is how it's going to turn out in your story. We'll get to that more later. Or it could be a completely different relationship that just reflects the same kind of thematics that are in these other through lines. It's just the really heartfelt portion of your story that is about the conflict between people, not what they're arguing about, but whether or not they can grow and develop together in a relationship. And then finally, once you do all this work, because we're going to go through and build out this entire story, at the very end, you actually end up with something, which is your treatment. And Subtext actually goes through and puts it in the classic 3-act structure, which is on purpose. So you'll see Act 2 and Act 3, but no Act 4, because the story beats Act 2 and Act 3 are here in Act 2, the same exact ones with a midpoint there in the middle, which is what most people are comfortable with. So all the work that you do in the other parts will show up here.
Okay.
So what I want you to do for next week is let's do your player roles. So these are all the players that are in your story, right? This is the fun part. And players, so these different through lines, right? These different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they get shown to the audience is through characters. So the characters aren't real people. They're just players who sometimes hold an overall story view where they're the protagonist. And then they might hold in another scene a main character view where they're very much dealing with all the personal issues that they have. And then it gets handed off to other people. So players are really just buckets, like little vessels to carry a perspective for a little while and then hand it off to somebody else. Most of the time, the main character stays the same, which in your story, her name is?
Layla.
Layla. And you'll see, I just changed it here. I've already put her in the overall story for you. And then I also, because she has to be a part of the overall story, but then she has her own personal stuff going on. And then if you went back to the story beats, you'd see that it's automatically changed. It used to say main character, it now says Layla. So we know her story right off the bat, which is probably nothing like your story, but it might be close, that she fancies a particular group. She then thinks about the nature of something's relationship. She has a tell when gambling, and then she has amnesia, which isn't going to be your story. I'm sure there'll be some changes in there, but that's the general.
There will be, but we'll get there.
But even going through this, I don't know if you felt it, but it does feel like a complete story. It's like, there's something strangely complete about that. I'm not sure exactly what, but that felt like I heard an entirety of something. The influence character, his name is
Ruben.
Ruben. Same exact thing, Ruben here. And again, if we went to his story, oh, Ruben wants to return to the way things used to be. Then he addresses some progress. Then he has a future. And then he gets more ready, gets more into the here and now. That actually feels a little bit closer.
Yep.
So it says characters, and it's helpful in the overall story to have, your two teams. It has up here, you have groups.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I said I was going to be short. I'm going to go longer. So the groups.
You're just having too much fun.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure you have something to do. So the two groups, it helps to have one that's kind of like the good guys and one that's the bad guys. So your good guys are, if you're thinking like a group of firemen or a group of police officers or a group of adventurers, what to describe the kind of good guys in your story?
The good guys are brother and sister?
That's more specific and it's more relationship oriented wise.
I get that, but
like
I mean,
what are
there's
their
just
roles?
Layla and Cozy. It's not like there's.
Well, what are their roles? Like, what are their jobs? What do they do? What is their?
Their brother and sister. I did. That is.
But they have.
That's why I said it that way.
Well, okay, so like in Harry Potter, right? They're friends. Okay, that's fine, but they're like kid magicians that go off to school. Like I would say, a group of kid magicians.
Okay, so young witches.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah, it just generalizes everybody. And okay, young witches. Is there a bad guy group?
The Coven.
Oh, the Coven, perfect. So here, yeah, I'm just going to add a new group here. And I just added it like that. And then just, you want the Coven? Like that. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Creepy. And what you want to do is you grab a hold of this little handle here, and you just drag them over to the overall story. And now they can be a part of that. So now they can actually participate in that. And we might want to put Ruben over here as well. So he's in there. And then what that does is when you go to the overall story, right now it says the characters, but if you were to come in here, you can now choose the young witches, Layla, the Coven, which needs to be fixed, Ruben. And then let's see.
So I guess you get to take that out.
Yeah, that's fine. The Coven, that's very funny. Well, that's a very specific thing. I would never think that somebody would put the Coven. Actually, it probably makes sense.
Just take out that.
If I make Coven here. So then what that does is then when you come to the story beats here and you click on characters, you can now change it to one of the players that are holding that. So if Ruben is going to do that, or maybe the Coven realize a particular group's intention. So now you can start playing with the different players that are in your story. And then finally, the relationship, which I think I'll save that for another time because I want to stick to the basics of stuff. Okay. So what I want you to do for next week is to go through here and just stick with the overall story. Okay, so this is just plot. And I want you to go through these 5 story points, which are the beginning, the end, the first plot point, the second plot point, and then the midpoint, which are very classic things. Okay. And just start thinking of what starts and stops your story. So we know Ruben decides what?
What does Ruben decide?
He says to not take the magic.
Maybe it's not Ruben's decision. Maybe it's Layla's.
Oh,
I'm sitting here thinking about it, and maybe she shares her magic with him so he knows what it feels like to have something given as opposed to always taking.
Okay, so that sounds like an action.
Did I break it?
Well, these are decisions, right? That's what we had decided.
Right, that's
That's
what
what
we
we had
had
decided
decided.
with decisions. I'll tell you what, this will be perfect. Okay, so for now, for next week, think of how you want to start the story, how you want to end the story, and the big major act turns. If you can keep them all decisions, I don't want to force you into that. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Then these beats will make sense. If you switch it to actions, as if, you know, like, oh, we ended up in the wrong place. Now I'm going to share my magic with you. That's a very action-driven ending, which could be totally right. These won't necessarily make sense. So what I would rather do is just have you focus on the drivers and get an idea of what are the major act turns that would get you to that place.
Okay,
How's that sound?
I can do that.
Excellent. Do you have any questions for that before?
No, I'm a little scared that we're going to be going back to the drawing board next week.
For the action one? So you know exactly what to do as far as how to upload stuff, right?
Yeah, I know how to upload stuff.
what you
So
could do-
if do you want me to do that as part of my homework? That if I do find it's more action driven, go and pull in the new story form with action instead of decision?
Actually, what would be awesome is do it anyways and do them both. So
Okay.
then work through this as decisions, right? And just don't add any beats, don't do anything. Just use these ones that are already here.
Okay.
And then do the same thing for action, because then everybody will get to see what that's like, right? To see how they're actually different. And you'll get a sense of the feeling of it, like, oh, these are totally different one. And the one I really want to write is this one. Like, this one sounds like the kind of thing that I want to write.
Okay. I can do.
Does that sound good? Yeah, and it's
Awesome.
easier now because it's right at the beginning and we haven't made any huge decisions. Yeah, before we take the action of writing it, we should decide, well, actually, now you're going to take actions, and then those actions are going to force the decision as to which story form to use.
You're going to confuse everybody.
Well, it's an endless cycle. You just got to figure out where you're going to jump on the carousel.
Yep.
So we tried decision, and we got these actions, and now we might change it based on the actions, change the decisions, but that's great. And we'll get to see what the different feeling in the plot structure is, which I think is a great idea.
Okay.
And I would just add it to, just here, so we have both. And just like, this is the decision story, right?
Yes.
Just call it decision-driven story, and then you can add the other one that's the action-driven story. Sound
Okay.
good?
Sounds awesome.
Excellent. This was really fun. It's always fun. Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Diane. And then
Thank you.
we'll
Let's do a nice proper
how do we say goodbye?
exit. So just
Goodbye? I would leave all this stuff in. It's great.
no.
So I'm going to say goodbye, but then I will still talk to you.
Okay.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.